Good day to everyone out there, and welcome to another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. And let's get right into it, shall we? Okay, so today, we will be talking about three players today. And the first one is Jason Williams, White Chocolate. I said a few weeks back that Jason Williams was a solid point guard for his career. And never made an all-star team. Just was a solid point guard. And Jason Williams went to DuPont High School, played with future NFL Hall of Famer Randy Moss. For those of you who may not remember, he averaged 18 points and 10 assists his senior year and was named Mr. Basketball. Okay. And he originally wanted to play with Providence, but he ended up going to Marshall. Okay. And then Billy Donovan, who I believe was the coach at Marshall, took a job at Florida. So Williams transferred to Florida, sat out the 97 season, and came back and played the 98 season. He transferred to Florida in 1996 after Donovan took a job at Florida. But during his time in Florida, he was actually suspended for marijuana use. He was suspended for a few games for marijuana use. Then it was after one game where Williams smelled like marijuana again. Then he was suspended for the rest of the year. Excuse me. And he was suspended for the rest of the year, and his college career was kind of, if not over, because of those marijuana accusations. But those marijuana charges can determine your stock in the NBA draft. But Jason Williams was taken 7th overall in the 1998 draft by the Sacramento Kings. 7th overall by the Sacramento Kings. The lockout year. Lockout ended in January of 99. And he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting behind Vince Carter. Okay. Finished second behind Vince Carter. And the Kings had completely rebuilt their team from the one they had in 1998. Remember, they had guys like Olden Polynice, Terry DeHare, Mitch Richmond, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And so the Kings team in 1997-98 went 27-55, okay? And that's when the big move was made. The Chris Webber, Mitch Richmond trade. Okay. And Webber really didn't want to be there. But Sacramento had also added reinforcements. So they almost completely overhauled their 98 team with only, I believe, 2 guys remaining from that 98 team. Corliss Williamson and Lawrence Funderburk were the only players remaining from that 98 team. So they added Chris Webber, they added Jay Will, Vlade Divac in free agency. They also added Peja Stojakovic. Then they also got John Barry and Vernon Maxwell that year too. So they completely overhauled their team. It was a lockout shortened season, 50 games. Now Williams did have 143 turnovers in those 50 games. But like I say, he's finished second in the Rookie of the Year voting to Vince Carter. The Kings played a up-tempo style. They played at the fastest pace in the league. Defensively, they weren't very good, though. They weren't very good defensively. But nonetheless, they played at the fastest pace, scored the most points. And Jay Will was the show. And Jay Will was the showman. The Kings were showing improvement. They were 17-22 at one point. Then they won 10 of their last 11 to finish 27-23 and make the NBA playoffs. Where they would face the Utah Jazz and take the Utah Jazz to 5 games. And the historic Game 5. Jay Will really couldn't buy a bucket in Game 5. And not only that, I remember watching that game because I remember watching that game, and you know how veterans love to school young guys, okay? And so John Stockton kind of sensed that Jason Williams was taking it a little personally. And Jason Williams started to play out of control in Game 5. And John Stockton picked up on that. And he got under Jason Williams' skin like I have never seen him before. He got under Jason Williams' skin so bad. So bad that Rick Adelman had to pull him out. Because John Stockton had drew a couple of fouls against Jason Williams. And John Stockton sensed that Jason Williams was making it personal. So John Stockton took it to him a few times, drew a couple of fouls. And Rick Adelman had to pull him out of the game. And he was also getting Vernon Maxwell and John Barry, 2 emotional players of their own, were trying to calm Jason Williams down. So I don't recall Jason Williams getting much playing time in the second half of Game 5. Nonetheless, they took the Jazz to overtime in Game 5. Lost, but they were still a team on the rise. The Kings were. So in 2000, it was pretty much the same. The Kings played at the fastest pace. Scored a lot of points. Were not good defensively. Jason Williams actually shot below 38%. He shot below 38% in 2000. He attempted 505 threes that year in 2000. He attempted 505 threes during the 2000 season. And he only shot 29% from 3. And he had 296 turnovers that season, which was the 3rd most. And the Kings went 44-38. Took the Lakers to 5 games. Lost. Now they come back. Now the Kings come back for the 2000-2001 season. Jason Williams was having some behavior issues. Again, the marijuana charges that were brought against him in Florida when he was at Florida. He was suspended for the first 5 games of the 2001 season because he didn't comply with treatment options for marijuana use. And for 2001, the Kings added Doug Christie, Bobby Jackson, and Hedo Turkoglu. Yeah. And they improved to 55-27. Jason Williams' turnovers were down. But he had a lot of moments where he was erratic. Not only on the court, but off the court as well. And he was fined for racial slurs against Warrior fans, against Asian Golden State Warriors fans. So he was fined for that. And Bobby Jackson ate into his minutes, no doubt about it. Bobby Jackson ate into his minutes. He shot 433 point attempts. Jason Williams did. He averaged 15 points and 8 assists. Kings improved to 55-27. Beat the Suns in the first round. Got swept by the Lakers. Then, like I said, the Kings were growing tired of his erratic play and behavior. And Jason Williams was kind of growing tired of the Kings too. So that's when the trade was made during the 2001 offseason. The Mike Bibby, Jason Williams trade from Sacramento to Memphis. And he will be joining a Memphis team that had Battier and Powell. And Powell get assault. So he was joining a relatively young team. Big Country had retired in the preseason. Jason Williams was still Jason Williams. Of course, Grizzlies finished 23-59 that year. As a side note, Abdur Rahim, it was a 3-way trade, and Abdur Rahim in a 3-way deal was sent to the Hawks for the draft rights to Pau Gasol. So they finished 23-59. Then early in the 2003 season, Sidney Lowe, the Grizzlies' current coach, resigned, and Hubie Brown took over. And Hubie Brown was old school. He would get in your face whenever you made dumb plays. And Jason Williams said he liked that. He liked that a coach got in his face whenever he made a dumb play, because it showed that the coach cared. And so he was a lot more efficient under Hubie Brown. And it was probably put best by Magic Johnson, who said this back in 1990. Magic Johnson said, "You definitely come to give them a show, if all possible, while you're playing. Okay. So, Jay Will was still Jay Will. He was still doing flashy things, but he was doing them within the flow of the game. Memphis finished 28-54 in 2003. Then the 2004 season, that was a turnaround season when they went 50-32. When they went 50-32, and Jay Will was Jay Will. He was efficient. His turnovers were down. He was playing more like a traditional point guard. They went 15-32, but were quickly swept aside by the San Antonio Spurs that year. Then Huey Brown resigned a couple of games into the 05 season, citing health reasons. He wanted to step down. And so Mike Fratello took over. Grizzlies had a good year. Swept aside again by the Phoenix Suns that year. Then he got traded to Miami for the 06 season. Got traded to Miami on a team with D Wade, Shaq, Antoine Walker, Gary Payton, and Udonis Haslem. And so he was joining a low-hooded roster. And but Jay Will wasn't playing like Jay Will. Pat Riley wanted him to go back to playing like the old Jay Will. And he played like the old Jay Will. Miami Heat advanced to the NBA Finals that year. Beat the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games. And Jay Will was an NBA champion. So the 2007 season came around, and I remember that night when the Heat raised their championship banner that year. On opening night, the Heat raised their championship banner on opening night. And then they went out and got crushed by the Chicago Bulls on opening night. I believe the Miami Heat lost by 30 to the Bulls on opening night. This is the year injuries caught the Miami Heat. They still finished 44-38. Wade missed time. Shaq missed time. Jay Will missed time. But they still finished 44-38. And the opening night loss to the Bulls probably was a forerunner of what happened in the playoffs, because the Bulls swept the Miami Heat 4 straight in the first round of the 2007 playoffs, okay? So then 2008 rolls around. The Heat are the worst team in the league. Jay Will signs with the Clippers after the season. Retires. Came back, played a few solid years with the Orlando Magic. Came back to play for the then ended his career in Memphis, and then retired for good after that. So Jay Will was solid. He was solid, spectacular, sometimes erratic, but he was a showman, no doubt about it. He was a showman, and he played a pretty exciting brand of basketball. So Michael Redd is the other player that is another player that I wanted to discuss. Michael Redd attended West High School in Columbus, and he went to Ohio State, played basketball at Ohio State. Jim Jackson went there. Did he? Yeah. Yeah. Jim Jackson went to Ohio State. He averaged 22 points a game in 1998 for the Buckeyes. And Ohio State advanced to the Final Four in 99, where they lost to eventual champion UConn, the team that had Richard Hamilton. And so he was drafted by the Bucks in 2000. Didn't see much playing time in his rookie year. I believe he played in only 6 games his rookie year. They were already loaded. You had Big Dog, Glenn Robinson. You had Ray Allen. You had Sam Cassell. You had Irvin Johnson. Who else did they have on the team? They had George Karl as the head coach too. They had George Karl as the head coach. So he didn't see much time. His rookie year. They advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2001, where Michael Redd didn't see too much action in the playoffs. Advanced to the conference finals against Philly. Lost. And so they come back for the 2001, 2002 season. Michael Redd had improved his game. Michael Redd had improved his game, improved his outside shot, and he was getting more time. He was getting the minutes on the floor. And but there was a lot of infighting on the Milwaukee Bucks. There was a lot of infighting between George Karl, Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, Anthony Mason. So through 39 games in 2001, 2002, they were 26-13. Okay. And through 54 games, they were 32-22. But they ended the season at only 9-19 with a 90-19 record, and they finished 41-41. And that's the season Michael Redd averaged about 11-12 points a game. 11-12 points a game. And so he had shown improvement. And over the off season, the Milwaukee Bucks actually traded Glenn Robinson. There was a domestic violence incident that he was involved in, and he was traded to Atlanta for Tony Kukoc. And so the 2003 season began with Michael Redd playing in 82 games, 65 games. He was in double figures and averaged 15 points per game. And Ray Allen and George Karl didn't get along with each other. So there was a midseason trade that sent Allen to Seattle for Gary Payton. And they also acquired Desmond Mason as well. Milwaukee still made the playoffs. They faced New Jersey in round one, lost to the Nets. And so Gary Payton signed with the Lakers in the offseason. And Michael Redd, Michael Redd started in all 82 games. In 2003-2004, Bucks went 41-4. 41. He averaged 21 points per game. It was an NBA All-Star that year. Yeah, so averaged 21 points per game and was an NBA All-Star in 2003-2004 for the only time in his career. Michael Redd was an All-Star. Okay. Had another solid season in 2005. He averaged 27.2 points per game in the 2006 playoffs versus the Pistons. And he actually dropped 40 in one game in that series. Lost to the Pistons. Had another great year in 2007. He had his career high of 57 against Utah that season. And he also dropped 52 points against Chicago that year. And he was actually on the Dream Team, which they call the Redeem Team, in the summer of 2008, who won the gold. And so not only was he a All-Star, he was also a Olympic gold medalist. And so heading into 2008-2009, the Bucks acquired Richard Jefferson. And during the 2008-2009 season, tore his ACL. Then he actually tore his ACL again the next season. Tore it in the same spot. And came back again and still played. I believe he played a year with the Suns. And then he retired in 2013. Yeah, he retired in 2013. So the majority of his career was spent with the Bucks. It was after the 2004 season, I believe, where he signed a 7-year deal with the Bucks. So after his contract had expired, he went to Phoenix and played with Steve Nash for a year, but no. That was the other lockout year for the NBA, 2012, the 2012 season. And he retired in 2013. So Michael Redd was one of those underrated players that nobody talks about, who was actually pretty good. Got lost in the lore of LeBron, Kobe, Shaq, Carmelo, Ray Allen. So yeah, but Michael Redd was very underrated. Very underrated. And the final player we're going to talk about is Kenny Anderson. Kenny Anderson was one of the best players in New York and New York City high school basketball. I think he went to Malloy. Went to Malloy. Yeah, went to Malloy. Had a excellent career at Malloy. Committed to playing for Georgia Tech. Um, and he joined the Georgia Tech team that had future NBA players Dennis Scott and Brian Oliver. And so he was pretty good at Georgia Tech. You remember the one play he had, the one play where they were playing in Duke. Anderson came down the court. He to Bobby Hurley, and he actually hit the shot. So he undressed Bobby Hurley, and you should have heard Dick Vitale on that broadcast. Dick Vitale just lost his mind on that broadcast, man. But he played 3 years there, 89, 90, 91. Brian Oliver was gone in 1990. He played for Philadelphia, and Dennis Scott was a lottery pick of the Orlando Magic. And so Kenny Smith was drafted 2nd overall by the New Jersey Nets in 1991. They had Derek Coleman, the reigning Rookie of the Year, and they had Drazen Petrovic. And ironically, they also had Mookie Blaylock too. Go figure. Anyway, but they had Bill Fitch as the head coach. And Kenny Anderson was pretty much in the doghouse from the start of the season. Bill Fitch's doghouse at the start of the season. And he saw action. He only saw action in 65 games that year. Yeah, Kenny Smith only saw action in 65 games that year. And he was pretty much riding the bench for pretty much the whole year. And Kenny Anderson actually held out in training camp and at the start of the season because he wanted a fully guaranteed contract. And so the New Jersey Nets went to Derek Coleman and said, can you take a cut? And Derek Coleman said, yes, I will. And so Coleman took a pay cut. Anderson got the fully guaranteed deal he wanted. But he was behind Mookie Blaylock, and it was reported that Bill Fitch didn't like the fact that New Jersey had given up 2 players to acquire Kenny Anderson, to get Kenny Anderson in the draft. And so Bill Fitch wasn't happy about that. And he averages about 17 minutes per game in those 65 games. Bill Fitch was gone by the time 1992 came, at the end of the 92 season. And they brought in Chuck Daly. Mookie Blaylock was traded to the Hawks. And that's when Kenny Anderson came into his own. He averaged 17 points per game that year. And the Nets were 30-24 at one point. The Nets were 30-24 at one point. And this is why people absolutely hated the New York Knicks back in those days, okay? The New Jersey Nets were 30-24. And they were playing the Knicks. The Nets were at the Meadowlands. And Kenny Anderson took a flagrant foul from John Starks. And he broke his wrist. Kenny Anderson broke his wrist because of that flagrant foul from John Starks. And they were 30-24 at the time, and they went 12-15 without him. And so they finished 43-39, lost to the Cavaliers. They lost to the Cavaliers the previous year too, in the 1992 playoffs when they went 40-42. So going into 1994, it was Derrick Coleman, Drazen Petrovic, and Kenny Anderson. The big three that could have been. The big three that could have been. But Drazen tragically passed away that offseason in a car accident. So they brought in Kevin Edwards from the Miami Heat. And Kevin Edwards played pretty well. He played pretty well. He averaged 15 points per game for the 93-94 season, but just wasn't the same without Drazen. Kenny Anderson had returned from his wrist injury. They made the playoffs again. Lost to the Knicks in 4 games. Chuck Daly walked away from the Nets for various reasons, health reasons. And it was also reported that he didn't feel that the New Jersey Nets were committed enough. That the New Jersey Nets were not committed enough. So that's probably the other reason why he stepped down. 94-95, the New Jersey Nets were coached by Butch Beard. And Derrick Coleman and Kenny Anderson were feuding the whole time with Butch Beard. And the Nets went 32-50 in 94-95, okay? Kind of funny, isn't it? Derrick Coleman and Kenny Anderson had problems with Bill Fitch. They kind of got along with Chuck Daly. And here they are again having problems with Butch Beard. Kind of makes you wonder. Were they a wee bit uncoachable? Coleman and Anderson? Who knows? But they had problems with Bill Fitch. They had problems with Butch Beard. And actually, Butch Beard was benching Kenny Anderson during the at the start of the 94-95 season, believe it or not. And Derrick Coleman missed some time too because of injuries. And like I said, they went 32-50 that year. Kenny Anderson and Derrick Coleman started the year of the Nets for 95-96. Okay. But this is around the time where Coleman had a irregular heartbeat, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, this is around the time Derrick Coleman had a irregular heartbeat. So, I think he was dissatisfied with his contract or something like that. And so, 11 games into the season, they traded him for Shawn Bradley. They traded Derrick Coleman for Shawn Bradley. They traded Derrick Coleman for Shawn Bradley. Anyway. Anderson was traded. Anderson was traded around mid-season to the Charlotte Hornets for Kendall Gill. And so joined the Hornets team that had Larry Johnson. They had some veterans on that team like Robert Parrish. And so the Hornets only finished 41 and 41 that whole year. And then the Trailblazers offered him a 7-year, $50 million contract after the season. And he joined the Portland squad that had Isaiah Ryder, Rasheed Wallace, Sabonis, and Portland went 49 and 33 that year with Kenny Anderson as a starting point guard. He actually put on muscle during that offseason to better handle the rigors, the pounding of the NBA. And he played in all 82 games that season. And the Trailblazers also still had Cliff Robinson that year as well. So they went 49 and 33. Got kicked out of the first round by the Los Angeles Lakers. And so it was shortly until the 97-98 season where Kenny Anderson was traded to Toronto for Damon Stoudemire. But here's the thing about it. Kenny Anderson never reported to Toronto, okay? And it was around this time that Kenny Anderson was kind of known as a big spender, a huge spender. And Toronto ended up trading him to Boston for Chauncey Billups. Okay. So the Celtics went 36 and 46 that year. Kenny Anderson spent they drafted Paul Pierce that year. And so over the next few years he was solid. He became more like a pass first point guard, sort of like Jason Williams became in his time with Memphis. A lot more efficient. Turnovers were down. And so had some very solid years with the Celtics. Celtics made the playoffs a couple of those years. Then he was traded. Then in 2000, I think it was midway through 2003. It was midway through 2003 where he was traded to Seattle. I think. Yeah. I think it was midway through 2003 where he was traded to Seattle, where he backed up Gary Payton. Then Seattle traded him to the New Orleans Hornets for Eldon Campbell, and which proved to be a good move because Baron Davis actually missed some time during the year. So Baron Davis was out with injuries. So they had Kenny Anderson to fill in the spot. Then he's with Indiana for the 2003-2004 season. And he was actually the starting point guard over Jamal Tinsley that year. But he injured his calf. But Kenny Anderson injured his calf. Then Jamal Tinsley was the starter again. Then by the time Kenny Anderson got healthy, his role was diminished. Okay. So Pacers advanced all the way to the conference finals, lost to Detroit in 6 games. Signed with the Hawks for 2005. Played a few games with the Clippers, and then that was pretty much the end for Kenny Anderson. So, yeah. All right. Those are the three players that I want to talk about. They were all point guards. You know what I'm saying? They were all point guards. And let me just throw this one note in here about Michael Redd. Michael Redd really wasn't a good perimeter shooter when he came into the league. And it made me think of a guy that was drafted by the Lakers in 1990. Marquette had a guy by the name of Tony Smith, okay? Marquette had a guy by the name of Tony Smith who was drafted by the Lakers in 1990. And Tony Smith was a low percentage shooter and when he was at Marquette, okay? And Tony Smith was so good at putting it on the floor that his perimeter game was not worked on, okay? So, same thing with Michael Redd. Early in his time with the Bucks, he was so good at putting it on the floor that his perimeter game was not worked on. But Michael Redd worked on his perimeter game, became a pretty good outside shooter, okay? All right. That's it for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. Stay tuned because I will be bringing y'all more content. Peace. God bless you all.